Hello everyone, welcome to the video. My name is Arnulfo Garcia, and for my special project I did the student journal. So this video is going to be the main topics or the skeleton of what my entries were all about. So let's get into it. The first module was Intro into Leadership, which is where I learned that leadership is an individual leading a group towards a common goal, or essentially, as our professor put it, getting someone to do what you want them to do. Well, this is probably going to be faster than, because I've done this so many times, guys. I'm just going to try to get through it because it's way too long or I keep messing up, so let's just move on. So the second is Innate Leadership. That was the second module, and which is also the trait-based approach, which is almost the inherent characteristics of the leader and whether or not it benefits them. And this is also where the Big Five was introduced to us, which are the top 5 characteristic traits that will be indicators of whether or not someone will be good for a position, especially a business position. And these are, OCEAN was the acronym, so openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And we actually got to take a quiz, and that quiz was really interesting because I got to see where I thought I would have ended up on the score and where I actually did. So moving on, leadership skills was the third module. And this module was about exactly what it sounds like, and it's also where the cat's approach was also, or the 3 approaches of his they were introduced to us, which those were human, conceptual, and technical. And here I got to write about my oversight and how she had to take more of a technical and human approach, because me being a behavioral technician, we work with autistic kids. She is our board certified behavioral analyst, and so what she does is she creates behavioral therapy plans, and us, the behavioral techs, we're the hands and feet. So not only does she really have a firm grasp on what she's doing technically, but she also needs to have a strong human side to her leadership to be able to relate to the staff and even relate to the clients. It's more difficult than black and white, and I think you could assume that. Moving on, the behavioral approach, which was again human or task oriented. This is kind of where we break those two down, kind of going off of the third module also. So on the humanistic side, or the human side, if a leader is to take that approach, they are more to recognize, support, and develop leaders, whereas if someone is more on the task oriented, they are more invested in creating the lines, making sure that boundaries aren't blurred, kind of clarifying, planning, and monitoring the situation, and monitoring the subordinates. And so here I just kind of got to speak on myself and taking a human approach to leadership in the church that I lead worship at. And although we are also in multiple venues, so like the main services, or the third, fourth, and fifth graders, we're leading worship on different stages, and so depending on the stage, that's kind of where the approach differs. So if you're leading for a younger crowd, then there's more room for error. So what we try to do as worship leaders there in those venues is use those venues as an opportunity to help grow the musicians on the stage. Whether it's the drummer or the bassist or backup vocalist, we just kind of use those opportunities to take a human approach and really focus in on the individual and growing them into leaders, worship leaders, or growing them in their instrument of choice. And that's just kind of what I spoke on in that module. So the fifth module is a situational approach, which is this is where we break down the directive versus supportive. And it's also kind of what it sounds like. Directive is, again, more just kind of, they give directions, they make sure that goals are established, and they evaluate and define roles, whereas the supportive approach is more making sure that the individual is comfortable almost all around, so that's in their workplace or with their staff. So there I also spoke on my oversight and got to put in my 2 cents on using the module to kind of analyze the situation. So the 6th module was the achievement oriented, which is the module where we learn about how leaders are able to take barriers, either remove them or help their subordinates to navigate them to still be able to achieve their goals. And this is, let's see here. I forgot. This is also where path goal theory was introduced, and I got to speak on how speakers at the church are able to, or leaders at the church are able to use their influence to help motivate the listeners, in this case the followers, to maybe just mature in their faith or grow in their knowledge of it's a Christian church, some knowledge of the Bible and of Christianity as a whole. So the 7th module is leader-member exchange, which is where one influences the other and the other influences the one, in this case a leader and a subordinate. And also I wrote on the fundamental attribution error, which is basically, I'm not sure if it's a theory or not, but what I remember writing about is essentially what it presents the idea that whenever something goes well for someone, the tendency is to take, or when they have a success, the tendency is to take credit. Oh, it's because of my hard work, it's because of my dedication and all the hours that I put in. Whereas when when there's a failure, the person tends to blame it on external forces. And that was an interesting topic to really write on. So the 8th is the transformational leadership, which is probably the one that's going to stick with most of us the most, and it's basically how communication and building relationship the right way and within the organization helps to create a following. It helps to boost motivation and morality within the workplace. And here I got to speak on my new job actually that I had gotten, and how also the module is on how leaders can implement change in their organization. And being bilingual, I'm going to be able to bring in new business, because there are a lot of people here in Amarillo especially who primarily speak Spanish and don't, especially when it comes down to business. And so I'm working for a risk management company, and there are a lot of things that don't get translated well whenever there's a barrier in language. And so I'm going to be able to really step in and create change in the organization and get more Hispanic speaking clients in our books. And so the 9th module was gender participation and leadership, and here I just spoke on Jordan Peterson. You guys have probably heard of him. He's an author, a psychotherapist, and he's also a college professor. But he was speaking on some research that he was looking into in Scandinavia, where they're pretty far ahead of most of the world in creating an even playing field for men and women in the workplace. And much to our surprise, the more the playing field is leveled, the more men and women actually choose different career paths, and men tend to pick career paths like in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they actually make more money than a lot of women who take more. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's stereotypical for caring and nurturing. Women tend to be more caring and nurturing than men, and stereotypical men chose more stereotypical jobs as well. So anyways, that was really interesting. And the 10th module was diversity, culture, and leadership, which is I learned that after World War II, which is something I've been hearing about since I can remember, but is when globalization really began to thicken, and countries really began to become interdependent with each other. And on this module, I got to speak on how it's important to be able to communicate across cultures effectively, especially now that interdependencies are growing and globalization is becoming more and more prominent. So if you guys made it this long, I hope it was under 10. I don't know. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.